So let's start with the topic. Like a very good evening to all the people over here. So the topic we are discussing with the like eminent panel that is present over here. The topic is casual communalism and trust on two nation theory. We have Anand Ranganathan sir, Sushant Sareen sir over here, and Raman Malik sir has also joined. Few other panelists like Tariq Fateh sir will be joining. So, like, we will proceed with the topic. The topic will be bilingual so that all the people can understand well because the majority of people have requested that like they are comfortable in Hindi. So, we will be bilingual over here. तो सभी को लाइक इट्स अ वेरी गुड इवनिंग और टॉपिक हमने यहाँ पे रखा है कैजुअल कम्युनलिज्म एंड ट्रस्ट ऑन टू नेशन थ्योरी सो बेसिकली इस टॉपिक पे हम जो आजकल एक एटमॉस्फेयर क्रिएटेड है इंडिया में जिस पे आप चाहे एकेडमिया देखो चाहे मूवीज़ देखो चाहे न्यूज़ देखिए चाहे हमारे फेस्टिवल्स हो गए एक दौर का हर चीज़ में आप देखोगे कम्युनलिज्म का टच आपको कहीं ना कहीं देखने को मिलता ही है सो हमारे साथ एमिनेंट स्पीकर्स हैं मैं ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लूँगा बिकॉज दे आर मोर लर्नेड एंड मोर नॉलेजेबल देन मी सो वी विल प्रोसीड विद इट सो आई विल रिक्वेस्ट आनंद रंगनाथन सर to like initiate the whole space over here. Welcome, sir. Sir, two words on this, please.
Thanks very much. First of all, thank you so much to Sushant ji and to Raman ji and to everyone. And hello everyone, hello Kanchanda and all the esteemed panelists as well as the listeners. The topic is casual communalism and trust on two nation theory. And I think it concerns the way Pakistan and a lot of Pakistanis behave, although generalization is always a, a tough nut to crack. But the fact of the matter is that the nation of Pakistan was founded on religion. So they are obsessed with it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Everything they do, every action of theirs is either through divine, retribution or divine intervention. And I mean, you see it in even in the man of the match presentations. Everything is credited to Allah. Every action of if it was going to be a normal spinning delivery and it's a googly, it is attributed to Allah. If it was going to be a fast ball but it turned out to be a slow ball, that is attributed to Allah. Everything is Allah Ta'ala ka shukr hai. I mean, the boys played well, but it was all because of everything is because of Allah. It is a religion obsessed country, and I find it very odd, because it was founded on religion, and you would expect if a country has been founded on religion, you have given space to millions of people to practice their faith without fear of being antagonized by any other religion or any other. Basically, there is no other significant majority left in Pakistan anymore. And even then, when you see, it is so obsessed, it can only be because of one thing, that it is a relentless pursuit of, basically taking others into their own fold. And that is what Tagore said. That is what Ambedkar said. So there is nothing new that I am saying. Just to come back to this title of casual communalism, I don't think it's casual at all. I don't think it was ever casual. We find it casual because we are surprised by how they bring religion almost into every sentence that they speak. But it is so ingrained. I mean, you heard Harbhajan was saying, "Hum to ek hi hain," and then immediately he is corrected by Shoaib Akhtar saying, "नहीं भाई, हम उसमें ना जाएं, हम तो टू नेशन theory में believe करते हैं." And all these canards being spread by youthful idiots here, as two nation theory was propagated by Savarkar and all, it's rubbish. The first verified, statement on two nation theory was actually made by Karl Marx in his book, 1853 book called The Eastern Question, where he specifically and methodically laid out that for any practicing Muslim, there are two nations, Darul Harb and Darul Islam. And Ambedkar, talked about this in detail in his book, Pakistan, The Question of Pakistan and Partition. Tagore talked about, this in detail. So there is nothing new. And for people to keep on being surprised by or saying it is casual. No, I mean you only have to read the religious book. 52% of all the verses are meticulously describing who the non-believer is, who the kafir is, what is going to be the punishment, and how you must not be that, and what is the punishment if a Muslim becomes a non-believer. It is it is just so meticulously laid out and in so much detail that there is no room for any other thinking. I mean, it's complete submission. That is what Islam actually means. It is submission. And people who do not submit, Islam also says they are not true Muslims, and that is how Ambedkar said. I mean, I'm not. These are not my quotes. Ambedkar said it is impossible for a true Muslim to have a Hindu as his kith and kin. Islam, for anyone who is outside this corporation, as Ambedkar said, there is nothing but contempt and enmity. So the question is not to prove me right. The question is to prove me and Ambedkar and Tagore and Karl Marx wrong. The floor is open for others. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच आनंद सर. सुशांत सर, सुशांत सर आवाज आ रही है?
आई थिंक तो वो बिजी हैं. तब तक रमन सर, लाइक इस पे मैं आपका ओपनिंग मार्क लेना चाहूंगी. लाइक व्हाट यू शुड बी अंडरस्टैंड बाय दिस टॉपिक एंड व्हाट यू से रिगार्डिंग. आई थिंक रमन सर भी कहीं पे बिजी हैं.
आई थिंक कंचनदा हमारे साथ जुड़ गए हैं. वेलकम कंचनदा.
Can you hear me?
Yes sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make, Anand always has this habit of instigating me to intervene. This whole thing about casual communalism, I think it's not really the correct way to put it. Normalizing communalism would be a preferred choice of words. But that apart, what I wanted to actually say is that communalism by itself is not some sort of an ethical, moral, constitutional, or social crime. The word communalism comes from the word community. The word community comes from the word commune. And if I want to be identified as a Hindu, if I were a Muslim, I would want to be identified as a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Sikh. Per se, you cannot hold that against me. It's all very fine to say all religions are equal and every religion is the same. We have sages who said the paths are many, the goal is one. This sounds good, but in real life, if I did not believe that my faith and my religion is the best in the world, I would have discarded it. Right? And since I haven't, it is absurd to say, and if people say that all religions are the same, etc., etc., they are at best being hypocrites, and at worst, they are being dishonest to themselves. The second point which I wanted to make, the word fundamentalist has been brought into disrepute. Again, the word fundamentalist draws from the word fundamentals. Fundamental, fundamentals, and fundamentalist. Anybody who is sincere and sort of believes in the fundamentals of his or her religion, to the extent that he or she practices those fundamentals, is a fundamentalist. So a purist per se would be a fundamentalist. Now, does that make a fundamentalist some sort of a hate figure or a criminal or an undesirable element? No. Anand mentioned that Pakistan is a state formed on religion, on the basis of religion. I can give you another example. After all, most of the European nation states were also formed on the basis of religion. The those are not civilizational states. They are not cultural states. They are religio-political states. The other state which has been formed on the basis of religion in our times is Israel. It's a Jewish state. It's a declared Jewish state. And yet the state over there is a secular state because it draws a firm line between the government, that is the state, and religion, and that is Judaism. So the state does not interfere in religious affairs. The state does not lay down religious doctrine. The state does not call upon Jews to behave in a particular manner. Nor have I ever heard, I'm sure there are Jews who say this, but people, Jews I know, they are polite about other religions. They are respectful about other religions, but I don't think I haven't heard them say that, oh, all religions are the same. You Hindu, I Jew, same, same. No. So does that make them any worse than others? No, it doesn't. Because Judaism remains the cornerstone of Israel. And they are very clear in their minds that even a secular Jew is someone who does not rigorously follow the religious tenets of Judaism. Even a secular Jew will not disown the fact or try to dilute the fact that Israel is a Jewish state. So, a state, by virtue of being formed on the lines or on the basis of religion, Pakistan is one example. And the other example, of course, is Israel. The third quick point which I wanted to make is about this two nation theory. There, this was an impulse. This was an impulse which happened among the landowning zamindars. It happened among the leftovers of Nawabi India that post 1947 or post independence, after the British leave the subcontinent, they wanted to revert back to pre 1857. Now, since that was not possible, they came up with this Muslim homeland theory. And ironically, Jinnah, who was not strictly speaking a practicing Muslim, he enjoyed his whiskey, he enjoyed his ham sandwiches. He did not know any Urdu. And at some point of Muslim League's politics, Mahomet Ali Jinnah became Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And he became the sole spokesman of the subcontinental Muslims. That was, as I said, a hunt for pre 1857 India. Sir Said, I mean, he famously said, "I have two eyes. The Hindus are one eye, and the Muslims are the other eye. If you take away the Muslims, I will be one-eyed. If you take away the Hindus, I will be one-eyed." And the same Sir Syed then goes on to become a strong exponent of Pakistan. Uh, we also have the example of Iqbal, who composed Sare Jahan Se Acha. He goes on to become the person behind the Lahore Resolution. He is also the man who described Sri Ram as Imam-e-Hind. So this whole two-nation theory was more an impulse to regain the lost political clout. And although I don't entirely agree with what Jaswant Singh wrote in his book Jinnah, I would still recommend people to read it. Somewhere the pre partition or partition politics broke down, and Nehru and others, that is primarily the Congress, they did squeeze out Jinnah from the from the pre two nation theory political space. And since history is largely about what ifs, perhaps, if that had not happened, it would not have played out the way it did. And lastly, there is always this cant that we did not ask for Pakistan. In fact, we opposed the creation of Pakistan. Who opposed the creation of Pakistan? The Jamaat-e-Islami opposed the creation of Pakistan. Why did they oppose the creation of Pakistan? Not because they loved Hindustan, but for them, it was a political defeat to settle for what Jinnah called a moth eaten Pakistan as a Muslim homeland vis a vis Hindustan. So they saw it as a conflict and a contest between the 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 community of Islam and a country for Islam. So they felt that the community is a loser, both geographically and politically, by accepting a partition that leaves bits of land for the Muslim homeland. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kanchanda. I think Sushant sir is having a bit of a problem joining us. I think he's somewhere. If you could just extend the mic request to him. So in the meantime, yes,
Yeah. I'm trying to extend the mic to him. Also, Meenakshi Sharan ji is also down there. Like Meenakshi ma'am, like I have sent you the mic. Kindly accept it. Yeah, Dharma, please continue.
yeah, please. So I just wanted to add a quick sort of a question. If Anand sir, if you want to want to know your take on that. So basically, during the 1948 famous speech in the Calcutta Maidan, Sardar Patel mentioned that the Muslims who are still in India, many of them actually helped the creation of Pakistan. has the nation actually changed overnight? I don't understand how much it has changed. So now they say that their loyalty is towards this country. I highly doubt that. So whenever this sort of a situation arises, there have been many leaders in the past who have openly said that they did not stay back. The current scenario, which everybody quotes, that why we had stayed back, and we helped in the creation of India. So it actually is a myth, right? So I just wanted your sort of take on that, sir.
Well, what you say can be answered in two ways. Number one, in the way in which Ambedkar and everyone else who has, commented upon this concept of Islam and people who practice it, and the other is the contemporary scenario. So, if we go on point number one, as Ambedkar talked about the Ummah or the Muslim Brotherhood, and then in detail, as I mentioned about the two nation or Darul Harb or Darul Islam, and how it is a true Muslim's duty to convert Darul Harb into Darul Islam, and Darul Harb is a place where it is not ruled by Islam, and it is in a perpetual state of war, and that can only be ended if there is rule of Islam. So, I mean, that is scriptural. That is something that has been, that has followed down from, from the holy book for, more than 1,000 years. I mean, you can't argue with that. Well, I mean, you can argue with that, but the point is 1.8 billion Muslims believe that. And the fact also is that there are, and I have written on this, I have categorized them as good Muslims and bad Muslims. And I think the world is peaceful in very large measure, including in India, because majority of Indian Muslims are bad Muslims. And I have categorized who is a good Muslim and who is a bad Muslim. In fact, even Ambedkar had said, when he says true Muslims will never see a Hindu as a kith and kin. I mean, he's talking about Muslims who are expected to believe in each and every verse of the holy book. And Allah says that. Allah has laid that down. I mean, I have written on this in detail, 3 years ago. So the intellectual point is not in contention. I mean, there is the Ummah, and your primary goal for any true Muslim is towards that Ummah. That is why you see, even now, a lot of Muslim legislators, sometimes mistakenly or otherwise, sometimes unabashedly, let it slip that Sharia is above the Constitution. Sharia is above the Supreme Court. There are so many. In fact, Darul Uloom has actually said this, that we respect the Constitution, but the fact is that Sharia is above it. Sharia. So intellectually, there can be no debate. When you talk about contemporary, it is always dangerous. I believe, my personal belief is to generalize, because, as I said, I mean, I've already thrown in this, the argument of a bad Muslim. Now, obviously, there are, thousands, tens of thousands. I don't have the data with me of Muslims who dance, who fornicate, who maybe are homosexuals, who drink, all those things, who do all the things that are forbidden. There are millions of Muslim women who do not adhere to the strict dress code prescribed by Allah in verses upon verses. But they are Muslim, they are Indians. There have been so many Indian Muslims who are in the Indian army, who have fought for India valiantly, who are heroes. Abdul Hamid is one. There are so many. So, to generalize that the allegiance of all the Muslims, Indian Muslims, is not towards India would be completely wrong. Having said that, I have, as you said, I have already split my argument into one that was based on the Holy Scriptures, where the primary allegiance is to, to the Ummah, and the contemporary one. So I hope that answers the question. I certainly do not believe that all Indian Muslims have allegiance to a country other than India, or are not patriotic. That would be rank generalization. But the fact also is that it is they're caught between two worlds, because what do they do? They cannot condemn the Holy Scriptures. They dare not do that. They dare not leave Islam or become unbelievers, because the price for that is death. The cost of punishment for apostasy is death. So it's an intractable situation. People, non-believers, or i.e., Hindus and others, they have to accept this. And if you don't accept this, you would be at perpetual war. So people accept this hypocrisy. They don't repeatedly keep on asking the Muslims, "Do you condemn this? Do you?" And I know it from personal experience. You know, whenever I quote the Holy Book, and I challenge a Muslim to quote that, immediately three things come out. One, I am quoting out of context. B, as an as a non-Muslim, worse as an atheist. I do not understand the verses. I cannot. They are meant not for me. Uh, and then I say, well, why don't you quote the thing? And I say, no, you as a Muslim, I cannot quote it to a non-Muslim. So when you've prepared the ground for all your counterpoints, is there any point in dragging the argument on? So I just say my point of view, and I leave it at that. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandji. And just to, I have a small, I won't say disagreement, but a different view with Kanchan Das sir. You said there is a very beautiful book written by Venkat Dhulipala, Creating New Medina, where he has laid out this entire thing, this analysis, where he says that the partition of Pakistan was not actually, was definitely spearheaded by the zamindars and those in power, the Muslim leaders there then, but the idea was very well received by the general population, despite the fact that yes, the suffrage, the percentage of suffrage voters was like 10 to 15%. But then he has done 11 years of research, and he then came out with a book, and he largely did it in the province Uttar Pradesh, United Province area then, where he goes on to analyze each and every Urdu daily, especially one of the newspapers, Medina. And Jamaat-e Islami did not oppose the formation of Pakistan. In fact, Maulana Maududi is famously called Godfather of Pakistan. It was the ulemas of Deoband